Medicare cuts that would otherwise go into effect, and a procedure that Senator Schumer and I have been working on that will allow a truncated consideration of what could be a Section 301 reconciliation proposal, one time only, with a debt, with an amount, and allow the debt ceiling to be dealt with on a simple majority basis at a subsequent time. I think this is in the best interest of the country by avoiding default. I think it is also in the best interest of Republicans who feel very strongly that the previous debt ceilings that we agreed to when President Trump was here carried us through August. And this current debt ceiling is indeed about the future and not about the past. Obviously, we don't agree with the way the majority has operated this year. We thought the American Rescue Package should not have been passed, creating the kind of raging inflation that Larry Summers correctly predicted. And we certainly think the reckless tax and spending spree is a huge step in the wrong direction for the country. So I believe we've reached here a solution to the debt ceiling issue that's consistent with Republican views of raising the debt ceiling for this amount at this particular time, and allows the Democrats to proudly own it, which they're happy to do.
One of the most egregious provisions in the Democrats' reckless tax and spending spree bill is lifting the cap entirely, removing the cap, well, I should say not removing it entirely, but raising the cap on state and local tax deduction, because it benefits principally millionaires and billionaires in big, high-tax states at the expense of low-tax states like my state of South Dakota, where we don't have an income tax. So states like South Dakota that don't have an income tax end up subsidizing taxpayers in high-tax states like New York and New Jersey and California, by the way, which are the three biggest beneficiaries of this particular provision in the Democrats' reckless tax and spending spree bill. In fact, Senator Grassley has called the BBB the blue state billionaire bailout. And even Bernie Sanders on the Democrats says there is a limit to the hypocrisy among Democrats in actually advocating in their reckless tax and spending spree bill for a provision that literally provides a huge tax cut for millionaires and billionaires and very little benefit, if any, to middle-income taxpayers. In fact, 70% of the benefit of lifting the deduction, the cap on the deduction for state and local taxes, would go to 5% of the taxpayers in this country, the top 5%, and 1/3, 33% of that benefit would go to the top 1% of taxpayers in this country. So you literally are talking about a huge amount of money. In fact, it's the second biggest, most costly provision in the Democrats' bill. Would be designed specifically to give a huge tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires in high-tax states. It is just one of many reasons why this bill needs to be defeated, and I would certainly hope that Democrats would come to the conclusion that whether or not they want to spend more and grow government and expand government, which they're doing in all kinds of crazy ways with this bill, that they ought not be allowing millionaires and billionaires to receive a huge tax cut at the same time that middle-income taxpayers are going to receive little to no benefit.
So after the Democrats lost the races in November, including Virginia and across the country, they said they had to do something to help energize their Democrat donors. And they looked for something they could put in this reckless tax and spending bill, which would help those folks out. And what they put in there is something that's going to turn out to be cash for Christmas for their largest donors. This is something that was not in the original bill, and Nancy Pelosi just put it in after the elections in November. So who benefits? Well, the people who own the penthouse apartments in New York City that overlook Central Park, who hold the big fundraisers for the Democrats, the people who own the mansions in California and San Francisco and in Hollywood, who hold the big fundraisers for the Democrats. And how much are they going to benefit? Well, by estimates, on average, it's going to be above $15,000 per individual taxpayer. These are all millionaires. They are billionaires. Their income is very high. And you know, where are they from? We've mentioned California, Chicago, New York, New Jersey. You know, they call it SALT, state and local taxes. They pay high taxes at the local level, and now they're going to be, thanks to the Democrats, able to write them off on their federal taxes. On average, these are people that earn, on average, over $500,000. Cash for them, salt in the wounds of everyone else. The total cost of this, $275 billion over just the next 5 years. So I think the Washington Post did a good job of pointing out this is the second largest component of the entire, I call it a backbreaking bill, the reckless tax and spending bill. The second largest component of it, and as the Washington Post points out, this is just for the very rich. There's more money in this for the very rich than there is to help try to alleviate poverty in this bill. This is obscene, and it makes a mockery of everything that Pelosi and Schumer and President Biden claim that they stand for. That's why we need to defeat the entire bill.
I think the thing that I'm hearing about most from home right now is vaccine mandate. Everybody in Missouri that's heard me say anything about this issue since December of last year at every single event has heard me say, I personally think you should have the vaccine unless your doctor tells you you shouldn't. You can be pro-vaccine and anti-mandate. And what I'm seeing happen, and one of the reasons that I think the government can't force people to do things that they don't want to do in this front, you've got to be careful in government that your reach doesn't exceed your grasp, that you can't pretend to do something that at the end of the day you really can't do. I think the Biden administration probably is and definitely should be rethinking this. Now, so far the courts are rethinking it for them, but if the courts somehow let them move forward with this, what they're going to find out is that people who work at grocery stores that have more than 100 employees will lose a lot of those employees. There are grocery stores that have less than 100 employees, or there are other places you can work and make as much as you make at the grocery store. So grocery store owners are saying, we can barely keep the stocks shelved and the back room running right now. What happens if those people leave? Almost every rural hospital in Missouri that I've talked to points out that they may not even be able to get 100% of their healthcare professionals vaccinated. They certainly don't think they can get 100% of the people who keep the hospital open, the floors mopped, the cafeteria running, the security system running. And fortunately, the Medicare and Medicaid issue that was supposed to require them to have 100% vaccination by now, the courts have said you can't go forward with that. But if they had, most Missouri rural hospitals would have had to close because you can't stay open without Medicare and Medicaid, and they weren't going to let you stay open without 100% of vaccinated people. So whether it's healthcare professionals, people in police forces and fire departments that have more than 100 people, there's a police force right next door somewhere that has 20 people. You can go to work there because they almost for sure have vacancies as well. This is, I think it was C.S. Lewis said that the most insidious form of authoritarianism is when the government tells you you have to do something because it's for your own good. If this is for people's own good, this is something they can figure out for themselves.
Well, folks, it's less than 3 weeks until Christmas, and how many of you have your Christmas shopping done? Well, I don't, and a lot of folks don't at this point. Now, President Biden, just a while back, had said because of his efforts, the shelves will be, quote, well stocked for Christmas. But I don't know the last time President Biden rolled out to a Walmart or a Target to do his Christmas shopping. If he did, he would find out that a lot of things that people are looking for Christmas, they're unavailable, they're on back order, or if you've ordered them, they're late on delivery because we don't have enough delivery folks, or the price of those items have just gone up significantly. All of this is because of the problems in our logistics chain, supply chain issues, inflation issues. And all of this is because of Biden's policies and what the Democrats have been pushing over the course of the past year. So things are not going to get better if they continue pushing this reckless tax and spend bill, because inflation is going to continue. We're still going to have labor shortages. I hope that Santa can get all of his elves in order to get all these toys done for the kids across the United States and around the world, because Biden's policies aren't helping. We need to get folks back to work. We need to bring down inflation, and the only way that we can do that is to get our house in order here in Congress and make sure that we're promoting workers going back to work, a strong economy, and repairing our supply chain issues.
This is what's going on in Florida right now. This is Miami Herald, front page. The price is not right. They're talking about gas prices being up, food prices being up, housing prices are being up. You know, they weren't doing this a year ago. They weren't doing this before Biden got elected. And what you're seeing is this reckless spending that the Democrats have done all year is doing exactly this. It's hurting the poorest families in our country, families like mine growing up that struggle to put food on the table. Families are making a choice. Can I put gas in the car? Can I put food on the table for my kids? This new spending bill is going to do the exact same thing. It's going to cause more inflation, and it's completely unfair. They've lied to us. It's not paid for. First off, as you've heard, it's unbelievable amounts of money for the rich, but the poor, you know, they're going to see their taxes going up. We see small business taxes going up in their reckless tax and spending bill. We see middle class taxes going up. And on top of that, you can't believe this, they're cutting care money for charity hospitals in many red states. You can't make this stuff up. Tax cuts for the rich by the Democrats and cut Medicaid for the poor.
Leader McConnell.
Chad?
Thank you. You drew a pretty stark red line back in October on the debt ceiling, said you wouldn't help. Then you got criticism from your side that there was some assistance, even though the Republicans did not vote yes. You then excoriated the majority leader, saying you wouldn't help in the letter to the president. Some are now saying you've gone back again. What do you say when you drew those two red lines and now saying, oh, we're going to help indirectly raise the debt ceiling?
Well, the red line is intact. The red line is that you have a simple majority, party line vote on the debt ceiling. That's exactly where we will end up.
But some of those Republicans are upset with you, thought you had leverage this time, said you had leverage back in October, and disappointed in this kind of parliamentary arpeggio.
There are a lot of different voices, but the facts are not in dispute. This will lead to a simple majority, up or down vote on raising the debt ceiling.
Leader McConnell, why even have a 60-vote requirement to have the debt ceiling if you're willing to go through this level of legislative gymnastics to create a whole new law?
Yeah, let me go over it again. The debt ceiling agreed to in the previous administration in conjunction with the Speaker in a negotiated bipartisan way covered the debt ceiling through August of this year. This debt ceiling request has to do with the future, not the past. It's pretty clear that Senate and House Republicans do not like this massive amount of spending, whether it was the American Rescue Plan of almost $2 trillion or the reckless tax and spending spree now. So we want to make it clear that we do not support this level of spending, nor the level of debt required to support this amount of new spending.
Senator McConnell, do
how did this go over in your conference? And do you feel like you have 10 Republican votes to pass this change?
There are always differences of opinion among Republicans about how to handle a delicate issue like the debt ceiling. We'll be voting on it Thursday, and I'm confident that this particular procedure, coupled with the avoidance of Medicare cuts, will achieve enough Republican support to clear the 60-vote threshold. And then later, when the majority leader decides to have the procedure, it can all occur in one day, and the actual debt ceiling vote will be done at a 51-vote threshold.
Senator McConnell, do you envision any long-term